But anyway, it's good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Bartek.
Apologies for this is my breakfast. It's 2:30 here.
Right.
And I forgot to eat breakfast because people came over and we were recording.
No problem. No problem. I like it when people, believe it or not, when they feel the freedom to eat, to drink, and I love it when dogs and cats come onto the picture.
We'll bring a dog
We
in.
can bring a dog in
We
if
can
you
bring
want.
a dog in. He barks a lot, but other than that,
He barks a lot and pees on things, but outside of that, but that kind of goes in with the having to take a break. So.
Hey, are you here? Yeah, we reckon you'd be here. Tuned into the Paul Leslie Hour. We're bringing back Ira Ingber and welcoming for the first time Steve Bartek. Together, Ira and Steve formed the band Bearing All. Ingber and Bartek also worked with everyone from Danny Elfman to Bob Dylan. And starting right now, it's an in-depth, thought-provoking interview. It's here, right now, on episode number 1065 of the Paul Leslie Hour.
Well, I like to have a very open forum here, but I think it's time that I formally introduce you all. Now, Ira Ingber is a returning guest, a much controversial episode that we had, and welcoming for the first time Steve Bartek, and they are of the band Bearing All. Now, you might notice Bartek, Ingber, Bearing, so that's the name, Bearing All. And if there's anything that music should be, if you only had one word to put on it to make me want to listen more, it would be interesting. If it's interesting, I will get interested and I will listen. I will listen again. So thank you all so much for coming on here. It's a great pleasure and congratulations on your recorded work.
Thank you.
Now, I must respond though, Paul. The word "interesting" that you used is a curse in Chinese. May you live in interesting times.
Right.
So it works a bunch of different ways. But
It's also when David, the meal wasn't really great. You say, oh, it's interesting.
Right.
I think that the compliment, don't interrupt people in compliments is what I say. I didn't interrupt you, but I think that what you just mentioned about what we do, it certainly is a guiding principle to not take the beaten path and to explore possibilities. We're just finishing a song right now, and we're using two upright basses in it, bowed and pits, which normally would be an invitation for disaster because, well, we have two wonderful musicians that we've worked with, but the idea of having two basses is normally not done, as you probably know. But the idea of doing things that don't typically run as convention is what appeals to us. And I think it has served us well in that the discoveries that you make, the musical discoveries that you make when you go off on these we set up these possibilities for ourselves. We can talk about it in some of the songs. Limitations, for example, or unusual instruments or difficult to play instruments. That when we do things like that, this whole other set of gifts come to us that you couldn't have otherwise expected because, the conventions that Steve and I grew up with of, certainly in pop music, that, well, here's the verse, here's the chorus, here's the bridge, that isn't in play with us consciously because we feel that we've lived through that. And it's time to create something that affords us interest, using that word again, a different way of looking at things that maybe can invite other people along and say, wow, I never thought of that either. So that's my short answer. Right? Man, a few words.
That's your short answer?
Yeah. Wait till the long one comes.
Well, things get done more efficiently and when you're actually interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to maintain that whatever we're doing, it's something that interests us both.
Yeah. Yeah. The ultimate sin for any type of creation, whether it's a TV show or music, is if it's boring.
Yeah.
You don't want to be boring, that's for sure. So what was the spark that got Bearing All going?
We've been playing together in a band for a while, Jackie O, doing clubs and writing stuff together, the whole band together. And they were on hiatus. The bass player, much like right now, the bass player goes on tour with other people, and so does the drummer. He has another band. And so Ira and I were kind of looking at each other and go, well, let's try something.
We were twiddling thumbs.
So I forget what was the first one. The first one, it was just like, okay, we got together to see if something happens.
Mm-hmm.
And
turn on the light.
Turn on the light. Okay. And it interested us after we got going, and we kept doing it.
I think also Steve and I have had these lives that really should have intersected earlier. We found out not a long time ago that we lived in the same neighborhood in Santa Monica years before we knew each other.
And we both used to go for walks.
I mean, we probably saw each other in stores or restaurants.
And avoided because of who we are.
We avoided each other, yeah. but it's funny that we have mutual friends, one in particular, Miriam Cutler, who was in Mystic Nights with Steve. And she and I were still very close. And she kept saying, oh, you and Steve have to get together. And I was in fear of this guy because I saw what he had done. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? You know, I don't need another guitar player to be fearful of. But as it turned out, in the 80s, later 80s, when Steve was working on one of his many movies with Danny, I got called in to play on two scores, but one in particular was Midnight Run. And Midnight Run was many things, least of which it was an opportunity for me to do what I, at that time, had this sort of a singular or very rare ability in town. I could read music and play slide guitar, which at the time was very rare, and now everybody does it.
Everybody does it.
George
Deering does it.
It's commonplace now, but it was kind of more specialized then. And then Steve and I, because he was the orchestrator.
I was a frantic orchestrator running around with pencil and paper.
And so I came in and played in that. We got friendly, and then time passed. Boingo was still active then for about 5 more years, I guess, right? Yeah. 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, 95.
And by the time that Boingo disbanded, then Steve, I guess you were still working with Danny on movies.
Right. There's like between 95 and 2005 there was at least a 10-year period where I kind of didn't play guitar. I was an orchestrator. The other part of my guitar playing life kind of like dried up. Nobody wanted me.
They didn't see any reason for it, I guess.
No.
But so at his, I guess, was Mary Beth's.
Mary Beth's, my wife, Mary Beth, insisted that we do jam sessions. So I started organizing backyard jam sessions. If I was going to do jam session, invite musicians over, I decided I'd do charts. Had to have a theme. I'd make it so that a musician could come in and just play and not have to know the song, not have to, it could be a jam session. And it wouldn't be just us flailing along trying to, do free jazz. But she encouraged me she made me, she forced to get that together and we started having like 2 or 3 a year in the backyard. And Ira jumped in the very first one. And he was one of the guiding forces that made it worthwhile doing, to be playing with Ira, doing just the first time was Elvis. So I think
that's right. It was Elvis in the first one.
The first one was just Elvis tune. So it was great. And Ira's kind of an Elvis expert too.
Yes, I'm a Elvis investigator. So it got us playing together is what happened.
Right.
Among many other things, other musicians who I didn't know were also at these events. They were pretty large, well attended, 100 people sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe. And one of them in particular was a fellow named Bear McCreary, who has since gone on to make quite a name for himself as a film and TV composer. And we started doing sessions. Well, Steve first, Battlestar Galactica TV, playing guitar for Bear. And then
Walking Dead.
and Walking Dead. And then Steve called me and he couldn't you couldn't finish the Eureka show.
Right.
So I finished that one for Steve. Well, then it became my show. But we started doing sessions together for Bear. And so that got us playing more together. And then
And having to talk to each other.
we had to talk.
Yeah,
we had to talk.
Had to relate to each other.
And then, there was some a couple other playing opportunities, and we realized that we really did enjoy playing together because it wasn't competitive as much as it was collaborative.
Which kind of the joy about playing in Jackie O, playing a nightclub is getting to play with a guitar with Ira, where we're both listening to each other and everybody else and collaborating. We're not. It's not a battle like you said. We're making something together.
Yeah,
we're making
in real time.
In real time, whatever the phrase is, whatever the rhythm is, it's like it just kind of like we're sympathetic.
Yeah. I'm sorry if you hear that. Sympathetic, but in addition, for me,
it took me that long.
That was good. That was funny.
It was very good.
That's a joke, son. My entire musical life, from the very beginning, has always been relating to another guitar player. I've always enjoyed much more the interaction of working with a guitar player than, say, working with just a keyboard player or a trio thing. I don't find it as rewarding for me. I like the idea because to me, guitar it's orchestral, and it's a section instrument more than, yes, we play lead guitar, but it's when parts interlock on guitars, to me, that's where a lot of excitement takes place. And so that was leading up to, and now a through line of Bearing All, which is guitar certainly centric.
Yeah, but it curiously, it doesn't have a whole lot of guitar solos.
Yeah,
most of what Bearing All was based on was doing things that had limits and that we were uncomfortable with. One of the tunes, and it was the first one.
The first one, yeah.
Where we each grabbed the guitar that was most uncomfortable for us to play.
Now, why would you do that?
Yeah,
well, because
you play it differently.
You play it differently. The ergonomics of any given instrument are going to make you play and think a certain way. The obvious stuff is you'll play an acoustic guitar very differently than an electric guitar, obviously. But even with electric guitars, you'll play a Telecaster very differently than you'll play a Les Paul. They just do different things, and you react to them emotionally and, intellectually, certainly different. So in that song that he's mentioning, it's called Turn on the Light. We're playing these very difficult instruments. Well, you work within the limitation. The world that we inhabit, the audio world of digital, has largely removed limitations. That we grew up in the analog era where you had so many tracks of tape of space for things to record. And then when you ran out of tracks, you were largely done. In the digital universe, there are no limitations. And that's a problem for a lot of people because it postpones decision making. It's a recipe for self-indulgence, obviously. And it largely takes you, or can take you, it doesn't for us, but it can take you away from the core of what you're doing. And in the case of the songs that we've recorded, we set up those limitations because it's critical to push up against them. because that's where those moments come where, I mean, a good example of that would be on this new song we're working on. It started out with this drum loop that I didn't fall in love with it, but I didn't fall in hate with it either. And so these are the drums that, the imaginary drummer came and left the studio. We got the drummer who doesn't exist, but in my mind, in his mind, he does. And he's gone, and this is all we've got. So we have to make it work. And so that's what we've done. And thinking within that constraint of limitation really does give rise to a host of new creative output that you wouldn't have otherwise had to, you wouldn't see otherwise, just because if you're not pushing against something, it's the old sand and the oyster in the making the pearl.
Oh, okay.
Sand in the oyster, mouth, stomach. I don't know.
Oysters can't dig into sand.
They can't. Right, that's true. But anyway, so in the range of all the songs that you probably checked out, Paul, each one of those songs has something about them, or many things about any given one, that there were those moments where we realized we're pushing against something, and what we came out with was something far greater than what we could have anticipated.
Well, earlier, Steve, you mentioned, I think it was you, Steve, who mentioned Danny, and I just want to clarify for all the listeners, we're talking about Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
And I mean this as a compliment. I hope you all take it this way. There is a cinematic quality to There Goes My Compass. Do you all have any story about Danny Elfman that you can tell us? Maybe something that you all picked up from him, or what it was like to be around him.
Well, Steve has 50 years of it almost.
Well, the one thing the conclusion I came to recently, because I conduct it was a Coachella show, but we've been doing it in lots of places where I conduct a little orchestra and I get to come out and play one song. And he has this other whole band of great musicians that play the style he's playing now that I don't really do, but they're just the best that can do it. The drummer is on tour with St. Vincent, the Neely Bruce, one guitarist plays with in Las Vegas, and the other guitarist the guitarist and the drummer are both from Nine Inch Nails. So this Stu Brooks is a great bass player and aids Danny in his production. So he's got this whole thing going. And I realized watching them work and rehearse is that the thing that Danny does really well, he gets what he wants out of musicians, but he gets it from them contributing. And that's how the old band worked. Yeah, Danny was the center. It was his sound, his songs, and he brought the material, but he got everybody to contribute in a way that one made everybody happy and made him happy and made everybody feel that we're contributing. That's a real special skill. And it just recently, this past year, working with him, it dawned on me that that's what he's really good at, and that's why he is where he is. I mean, he knows how to get the best out of musicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my experience with Danny, obviously way more limited than Steve's, working on the film scores, but like any good, dare I say, great leader of a given situation, if it's Danny or Bob Dylan or Don Van Vliet, people I've worked with, the one thing they all share in common is that they inspire you to pull out things from you that maybe you hadn't thought you could do, or to certainly contribute and to help create an atmosphere of real intention and focused, a good focus through line that all of these people seem to have in common. The idea that this is important work we're doing. And with the musicians that we bring in, we typically cast musicians for our songs who we think singer we want to bring in, or in the case of this new song, 2 bass players, horn section. We've had the Boingo horn guys. We want to bring that to our productions as well, things that we've experienced as musicians working for others. Now, in the musicians that we bring in, that same focused intention. And the result is predictable. We get great performances out of people because they want to be their best for us. So I think that's one thing, to answer your question, for me, for Danny, is that he brought out the best in me at that moment.
And the good thing about Danny, and I work with this guy, John Bryan, and just did a film with him. And it's kind of, they relate while they're working, they kind of oversee it in the same way. So sometimes a little tiny detail, like with John Bryan last time, he said, well, let's go to tremolo for these 2 bars. And with the picture that he was doing a film, it made a huge difference. It's like a tiny detail, that simple things like that as a musician, you're not, you go, you're reading the guys are reading the paper, don't think about, but the overall picture from the composer makes little details make a huge difference. And Danny's really good at finding you little details. They may be annoying to the engineer who we have to like take another take or do this for 2 bars, but in the end, it's all worth it. And anyway.
Well, Ira, you mentioned Captain Beefheart a moment ago, and it's worth noting you all have a single out right now. And, I knew about Burying All, but I was listening to Spotify, I was listening to stuff, and that song just popped up.
That's what we're supposed to do. That's great.
What's that?
That was our intention. It was supposed to pop up. That's good.
It popped up. My head is my only house unless it rains.
Right.
What was he like? I know that's a big question, but...
Well, you can't answer a question like that with Don Van Vliet.
So did I meet him before you?
Yes, you did.
So I was just out of high school. I was in high school. And 2 saxophone player friends of mine had run into someone who was working at the Trot Mask replica house, which was 2 blocks away from where I live in Woodland Hills. And so they brought me over one night where it was Captain Beefheart and these 2 saxophone players and me jamming. Just he had a microphone and he did harmonica a little bit, but he blew me away when he was singing the blues in double stops. He was like Tuvan singing, where he had 2 notes coming out of his voice and singing a blues along. It was like he was amazing. He did say, "Oh, you must have taken acid because you play like you took acid."
He was not a literalist. Let's start with that about him. There was no, to get from point A to point B, you didn't follow a straight line with that guy. But he led you on this path, much like the people I was talking about earlier, bringing out performances. I got to write with him. I was quite young. I was in my mid-20s. And my brother was in the band. My brother, Elliot Ingber, played on Spotlight Kid album and then toured with him. So I was a known commodity. I was brought into this thing through my brother, and Don was very unusually accessible. I didn't think he would be that accessible as a human being. He related to music, and he saw that I had some abilities to help him translate what his ideas were, because he didn't write things on paper. That's not the way he got his ideas across. He would sometimes whistle parts, or he would make, body movement, like, oh, that's good. No, don't do that, do this. But the communication was made, so you got the point. And I think his records bear testament to the giant talent he was. The fact that he, again, for me, as a young guy, seeing possibilities that were not those straight lines. It was a different way to approach music, a different way to listen to it. And it wasn't based on convention. It was based on unconvention, if there's such a word.
What was it about that song that compelled you guys? What made you think, okay, let's put our Bearing All stamp on this?
Okay, I'll start. You're going to finish this with me. Well, our manager, consigliere, Mike Gormley, suggested it would be a really good idea for us to do a cover song. And there's wisdom in that because it popped up on your Spotify list. Obviously it worked.
Which was the entire purpose, was to get it to an audience that wouldn't just find us.
Yeah. It was a contrivance, So
yeah, I mean, we could have covered a Beatles song, could have covered, there are all these other choices. But we chose that song because
I've always loved the song. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs, period, on one of my favorite albums, Clear Spot. And my involvement with Don and Steve's involvement with him. So we have a personal artistic investment with the guy. And we had played it with the other band for a bit, the song. And the problem that we had with the band was, and they're wonderful musicians, but they're musical literalists. They learned how the song went from the record, and that's where it stayed. And the more I played it with them, the less interested I became in that song because it died every time I played it. It was just recreating what they thought in their head. This is how the song goes. And to me, music does not go anywhere. It's how it lives in the moment. And so when we set out to do our version of it, Steve in the back here has this ancient drum machine. It's a Wurlitzer Sideman from 1959. Horrible sounding machine. Absolutely, but it was perfect for this.
it's a mechanical wheel that has electrical things on it that trigger tube sounds. The tube makes the drum sound and makes the just like white noise kind of stuff that's filtered.
That doubles that almost fooled people for about a half a second.
Yeah.
It was drums. But in 1959, when the Wurlitzer piano came out, this was the sideman, the companion, and Steve happens to have one. And we thought, well, this is a great thing to take it away from the possibility of real drums, which is what you hear on the recording. So I would invite your listeners to do a little Google dive. You'll find a lot of videos on the Wurlitzer Sideman.
And the other connection to me was that it was advertised by a guy named Raymond Scott, who
Yes.
I with a friend had done a whole concert of Raymond Scott's music 10 years ago at the Disney Center. And it makes sense because Raymond Scott was one of the first to make a sequencer that Bob Moog's father took him to go see the sequencer that Raymond Scott made in his big studio in New York. So it has resonance.
Yeah.
With
I forgot the
everything.
Raymond Scott part. Yeah. So, I mean, it gave us the opportunity to approach this song with a clean slate. We were not bound by the recording. We weren't handicapped by having to recreate arguably this unbeatable recording. You're not going to beat that original. I don't care how hard you try. And I've been through this before a few times in recording things, tribute albums or things like that, where how do you approach this new interpretation? Because you're not going to ever beat the original. There's no way you can do it. So you go around it, And so what we did with this one, and it was accidental too, when I was hearing the drum beat, I heard it in the wrong place and it was on beat 2, I think it came in. So the loop should have started on beat 1, but it's on beat 2. So it's kind of turned around on itself, which is beautiful. Again, a happy accident. And so the song came together. The other idea was that because we really, really belabor our productions, not because we're because we work slowly. He's a busy guy. I'm a busy guy. And so we make time for this. And so it takes a long time for our songs to get finished. We don't have tracking sessions with musicians. We discover our music. But this one, the idea was, let's do a cover. Here, requirement number one. Number two, let's play it live. So the recording you hear is, with qualification, a live recording. It's live. All the parts were live. There are no overdubs. We had selected different takes in the recording that you heard, Paul. The final mix of this song is no overdub, sound massaging. There's compression and EQ and some reverb, but there is no additional part added. And it was all because we went into it thinking, let's get this thing as a live performance and it'll be done. Well, as a consequence, the only time we've played live since, we actually played this song live. We brought in a good friend, percussionist, MB Gordy, who's a world-class percussionist, who Steve wrote out the rhythm of the Wurlitzer drum machine for MB to play, start with this, and he of course expanded on it, but
and
the Vietnamese percussion.
Vietnamese percussion instrument.
There it is. Show the Vietnamese percussion. Can you see it from there? It's that thing.
What color is it?
It's brown.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah, so we're Steve found this in a thrift shop. Where was
It was at an art in Santa Monica arts. Santa Monica Gallery's gift. Yeah, it's a gift shop.
I'm sure it sounds great on Zoom, but again, something like that, you would never. Why would you use something like that? Well, we made good use of it. That's the short answer to why that song got chosen. And I'm absolutely thrilled with how it came out, because, as I said, it's one of my favorite songs, and we've had really good feedback from people. If you look at the comments on YouTube, oh, this is one of my favorite Beefheart songs, and it's very Beefheart song.
Right. I mean, I tried to use the lick that the original starts with, but
we pay homage to
it.
to the parts, but we made it our own. And I think that ultimately, anytime you do a cover, unless you're a cover tribute band, which that's a different story, the idea is to make it your own, make it something that has your stamp on it, which I think this one does.
And maintains interest for you.
And maintains the interest.
Back to the theme.
Yeah.
Well, beyond, we've mentioned Elfman here and Beefheart, people that you worked with together. Are there any, would you say, musical acts that you all have bonded over? Strong mutual appreciation for certain artists.
Oh, yeah. Yardbirds.
Yardbird. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yardbirds. Big one for both of us.
Yeah. Anyone, any guitar player our age would have bonded immediately with the Yardbirds. Were the guitar heaven. It's like the guitar gods were there.
It wasn't just Clapton or Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck. It was the band.
It was the way they approach. I just read a book about I can't think of his name.
Keith Ralph?
No, Georg.
Right. Yeah, the producer.
The producer, and how he got these performances out of them back then, and what they were doing. It's like it was like nothing you heard on the radio at the time. There was a song called "Still I'm Sad" that
Gregorian.
It's
chant.
like a Gregorian chant on pop radio. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like.
So Yardbirds, Cab Calloway,
Little Feat. There are lots of cross references. The two of them that the Beatles and surf music.
Yeah, the surf music part that's another discussion point. But yeah, I mean, I think because we grew up not just at the same time, but in the same place. You know, we're Southern California guys.
Right.
And
Yeah, the birds.
everything that we heard as young guys was plays a role in this thing because it was such the pop explosion that was taking place when we were in our teens. Here, it was taking place here, and specifically, he was out in the suburbs. He was in the valley. I was in Hollywood. It was. I was at the epicenter of this stuff, and it was it shaped pretty much my early perception that stayed with me my whole life. It's a through line. It's another through line. My brother, who I'd mentioned earlier, was in the Mothers of Invention, the first band on the Freakout album. Frank was a huge influence on me because I got to see that in real time. And, you know, seeing how something that was so anti-pop at the time could still somehow register a place in a collective consciousness. Now, we know that it was it had a minimal impact in the United States and maximum in Europe, as it turned out. But in my world, Frank was a superstar in '66. You know, I got to go to those sessions. I was at some of the Freak Out sessions, and it wasn't lost on me seeing how, again, it was about possibilities, you know, that Frank brought in orchestras in 1966 to play his music. That wasn't, I mean, the Beatles were just starting a little bit of that, but not nearly what Frank had done with it. So I think that our influences, Steve's and mine, were similar in part because of the time and the place where we grew up. And also, I just think our sensibilities were just kind of they overlap. You know, we hear things similarly, which is a real gift for both of us.
Again, back to playing live with this guy, Jackie. It was like sometimes we're suddenly playing the same thing in harmony.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about the song in the same way, that this is what should be happening, and there we go. It's a real joy.
Well, folks, we're going to take a quick coffee break. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, ring that bell, and give us a comment or a like. Be sure and check out Bearing All. You can find them on all platforms.
The album, by the way, is called There Goes My Compass. Shameless plug.
All right. I've got some good questions coming.
Good.
Uh-oh.
I hope.
But it is a good time for a bathroom break. I'll be back.
Absolutely. This pineapple sure is delicious.
We're back.
All right.
Yeah.
Everybody have a good break?
Yes.
We went out to lunch.
Productive.
Excellent. I got some pineapple here.
Okay, so you're all set.
I always find, I don't know what it is, when there's a 2-disc set, I tend to like the second disc the most. And when I go to a concert that has an intermission, it usually seems like the second set is the better set. So here we are in the second set of our interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, we opened first. So that was good.
The openers, right? What is it like for you guys when you listen back, when you're playing back for the first time one of these tracks? Is it something that's joyous? Are you self-critical? Or what's it like?
It's kind of both. First, it's joyous on a really base level that we made it through this thing, and joyous that we've got music there. And then then you start being critical. It's like, okay, well, this works, this doesn't work. What if we take this out? And you start thinking about the construction of what it is we've put in front of ourselves.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. the feeling that, hey, we got this thing now. And then the for me, somehow it's the terror. Now what do we do? Of those decisions that Steve mentioned, take this out, put this in. A lot of things become self-evident, but not everything does. And those are the times when you got to go, we'll throw ideas back and forth. What if we took this section and put this over there and did this? Again, because our music is not through composed, where if we were to, get musicians in a room and say, okay, here's the music, or we'll rehearse it with them, it'd be so much easier, and it would be certainly way, way, way less rewarding in terms of what this project is. This is not, we don't go into it knowing what it's going to be. That's really the overall umbrella of this.
In contrast to the Captain Beefheart cover, it's not a live performance.
Right.
We're performing live in it, but it's a recording. We're shaping something to get done.
So it really is a combination, Paul. It's not an either or more one than the other. There are things in every one of our songs, for me, and maybe for Steve too, I wait to hear every time, and that's the gratifying stuff. There's one of our songs, Arthur Murray's Dancing Pants. John Avila, our bass player, he plays this thing that just cracks me up every time I hear it. It's this little thing he plays that is just so perfect and funny, and
his personality
just shines right through it. Those are the moments that, for me, I find the rewarding ones, because it makes you want to hear it again. It makes you want to experience that feeling. Bob Dylan has this great metric, which he's shared many times. When music is good, and he says, you could play it all day long. That's when it's good. When it's bad, why would you want to hear it twice? It's simple, but he's really is on the money with it. When something is good, I could hear John Avila's part every time, and I'll laugh every time I hear it. I guess I'm a cheap laugh, but the fact is that all of our music has that stuff in it for me.
Well, in doing research for this interview, I can't resist asking you all this question, because it didn't really give an answer. I was listening to the Gormley or
Mike
Mike Gormley.
Yeah.
Mike Gormley. I always like to give credit where credit is due. Listening to that interview helped me in forming these questions. Everybody wants to put music in a certain classification. Oh, our sound is a folk rock sound, or oh, we are a Indian jazz band, or whatever. If you had to put Bearing All into a classification or describe it with words, what is your sound?
I think it's a fool's errand for me to answer that question. I couldn't, precisely because of the fact of the way we make it. There are elements there that I could say, oh, well, that's, there's a Beefheart moment, or there's a Jeff Beck moment, or there's this. But I, almost by design, again, this is me, you'll have an idea, I'm sure. The idea is that it defies classification, which works probably for and against us. I would be the last person to be able to say, oh, well, we are, this or that. Steve described it, what, adventurous exploration, something. Something sounded like a lawyer wrote it.
But yeah, the thing is that, okay, you have to have those labels to put them in. Used to have those labels to put them in spots in a record store, because you'd have reggae, you'd have, pop, you'd have whatever, ska, those are the only ones I know. So I think it's not fair. I mean,
I know what we're not.
Yeah.
Right? I know what we're not in terms of those categories.
Well, the thing is that, yeah, we're not, but we also are. Collectively, we are all of those things at some point in the piece of music. I'm not like a wholly, deeply classically trained musician, but I draw on that on anything musical I do. I draw on what little classical education and I had or experience with an orchestra orchestrating with Danny, and I draw on all that, and Ira does too with all his experience. He's like the best slide guitar player I've ever known.
That's not true. I am.
You are. But even when he's not playing a slide part, he's drawing on that. He knows you can feel it behind him. And I was once told as a guitar player that it was obvious that I wasn't a guitar player, because my first instrument was flute. So how I play the guitar is informed by the fact that I learned melody and reading classical music first. And I was told that it shows sometimes.
It shows a lot. I think that for both of us, guitar specifically, because we're both guitar players, I try to play music. I don't like playing guitar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are a lot of, the world is filled with phenomenal 5-year-olds who can play Flight of the Bumblebee at 200 beats a minute. To my ears, most all of them that I've heard, I'm just using that as an abstract example, I don't hear music, I'm hearing guitar playing. And there's a distinction for me in that the guitar is this, by definition, it's an instrument, it's a tool that enables me to express, in many respects, the range of what I'm going for musically. I've gotten to the point where I can pick up a guitar and get an idea across to Steve or to me or to anybody because I have a facility with the instrument. But to learn it, to be a technician, let's use Eddie Van Halen as an example, brilliant beyond. But I never heard a lot of music come out of that guy. I have ultimate respect beyond. The guy was the best. Talking about Eddie. But, and maybe it's just my own personal experience. To me, Frank Zappa as a guitar player was much more interesting. Not the technician, but boy, did he get his ideas across to me. I understood what he was going for. And all the greats that inspired both of us, Jeff Beck being one, he was playing the guitar better than anybody I'd ever heard, but he was also making music in a way I'd never heard it before. And the guitar was this way in. So I forgot what the question was, but these are all good answers. I know.
Just in terms of trying to give it a classification.
That's very good call. Well done. Well done.
So what was the thing I started to hear something about adventure that Steve, you had?
Unorthodox or what did we wrote on our website?
It's something I wrote for the answer to this exact question.
We had to answer the question. Steve came up with the answer.
I don't.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't remember. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm old.
The idea, I think, ultimately, we've said it a few times now, but I suppose it does require some repeating. The idea of classification and bearing all really are inimical to each other. They don't coexist. What exists for bearing all is the desire to push beyond classification. So I'll give you a quick example. So on this new song we're doing, there's one tiny section, and I thought there would be more of these background vocals. There's a 3-part harmony and I broke my own rule. I hate when lead singers sing harmonies, but I'm doing it just because it sounds fine and it's good. But it's only in this one section, and you would almost want to hear more of them. And every time I think about putting more in, I think, nah, it's working just perfectly as it is. But I had worked with Brian Wilson. And to me, nobody ever put vocals better together than Brian. I mean, the gold standard, right? And very informative about how he heard things, how those vocal textures, how the sedimentary rock of his vocal arrangements, you could see where he was going after the fact, but not while it was being done, because it was the sum total of what he had done. And so in my very tiny, minuscule, insignificant way, it's my homage to Brian in that I hear these vocal parts, and Beatles too, obviously, but more Brian than the Beatles for me, that inform that classification that we're trying to throw around here as an answer. Brian was a big one, is a big one for me, because again, he showed possibilities. Nobody did stuff like he did. Now, where did he get it from? Well, yeah, the Four Preps and all those vocal groups that he was inspired by, but he made it his own.
Is there anybody out there, any living artist that you all would like to collaborate with as Bearing All that you have in mind?
Well, we were about to.
Yeah. With Henry?
Yeah.
We a mutual, a friend of Ira's brother.
Yeah.
That admired Ira's brother's guitar playing is showing up for a memorial next week. And he is like a big hero of mine. He one of the records, French, I forget the title of the band.
John French.
Yeah, but what the band had the four guys.
Not Mudrang.
No. It was Henry Kaiser, who is the complete adventurous guitar player.
Yeah.
It's like he doesn't play anything.
He's definitely not a straight line A-B guy.
There you go.
He goes wandering around like we do.
So he's going to be in town. We're going to ask him if he would play with us. So we're hoping that happens.
To answer this question, Paul, also, we have done that to some degree with the people who've already appeared on our recordings. These are people that we know, that we feel, this would be a good add-on for us. I suppose in a perfect world, I'd love Peter Gabriel to come in and sing. I'd love, I think anybody else. Maybe Nels Klein would be nice.
Nels Klein would be wonderful. He was just on TV the other day.
Yeah. I mean, because we're fortunate, Steve and I, we know a bunch of people and we can make phone calls and people usually respond to us. We can kind of get people to want to do this with us.
I think that the question is kind of aimed at, there's no real pop or big star act that I think that we'd want to, it's different doing something with someone else's act or having someone come and do something with your act.
Right.
And that the first thing, I don't think there's anything that anyone that we're itching to go do that with.
Right.
But to have other people come in and enhance what we're doing, we're open to all kinds of things there.
You mentioned Bob Dylan earlier, Ira. It's something that I'm wondering if you can clear up. On Wikipedia, I saw you are credited also. Did you also play on Shadow Kingdom, Stephen?
Yeah. The regular guitar player, the guitar player who had been doing
Greg Lease.
Greg Lease had been doing all of them, right?
Greg Lease had done. Greg Lease before. Yeah, I mean, now that it's all public, Paul.
Right.
Most of it is. It's public knowledge now, so everybody's been mentioned. So one day, for one session, Bob called me and said that Greg wasn't available. Would I mind bringing somebody, or would I have someone in mind? He did that a number of times to me. asking if I would bring someone in. So there were people who appear on that thing that were brought in because I suggested they come in. And so Steve got drafted to play on one session and To Be Alone With You, I think it was.
That,
I think that was
sounds
the
right.
song.
I always forget the title.
Yeah.
I was so scared.
Yeah. And no, it was great because at that point there were 4 of us who
Yeah,
all knew each other really well
The-
playing with Bob.
The accordion player was Doug Lacey, who used to be a roadie for Boingo. And I had produced a record with him a long time ago. And and then the bass player was John Avila from Boingo. So
So the 4 of us playing together
of us
with
playing
Bob,
together.
it was very, everybody knew each other very well, and it worked out. It made it to the record.
Well, since you both played on the album, what is your most vivid memory of that time?
okay, mine was because it became a video. Bob was wonderful. He, as far as leading the band and getting ideas and talking to us like we had something to offer. He was great. But I took out my Epiphone Emperor guitar, and he came over and was like,
Yeah,
just
the nickel dropped on that one
yeah.
because
So okay, so that's the one I had to play because he was like. But then when he went to go shoot the video for it, he rented a guitar that looked just like mine.
yeah, but
for that.
not the same.
Sorry.
No, that's a great one because
Yeah.
it was. I could see. I think I even said to Bob, "Hey, Bob, take a look at this."
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
And ooh, and it's funny because when I worked with Bob in the '80s, the first time, I had borrowed shamelessly. I had borrowed my brother's Les Paul Jr., which it's a fashion statement. It happens to be a great guitar, but it's kind of it was then, maybe still is to a degree now, kind of a statement of real hipness. It's an inside joke. And so I brought it to that session and he really liked that. And as a matter of fact, took me down. This was at his house in Malibu. I've got one of these too. So we went downstairs in this kind of a basement space and there was his, so the casting your guitar is very important as a fashion accessory.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
As well as what it does tonally. But I think simply the answer to that question, Paul, is I was so inspired throughout the recordings of by the poignancy of this 80-year-old plus guy, 80 plus years old guy, re-recording these songs he'd written when he was in his 20s, and the perspective that had changed. That was obvious. The way he sang the songs at the Shadow Kingdom sessions, how different and how they had evolved and how they no longer were bound by the time in which they were written. Obviously they're timeless for a lot of reasons, partially because they're great, but also because he interpreted them with this whole different point of view that couldn't have happened until he reached that age where he saw them very differently.
And he would change a lyric.
A lot of lyrics did change, yeah,
Just
in the moment. But I think it was that poignancy that I picked up on that was so, it wasn't lost. It wasn't only on me. Everybody there felt it as well, that he's doing these songs that meant so much to me, but they probably meant a lot to him, in his own way.
and he wanted to make sure not to do them the way he had done them then.
Right. And that brings us back to what we had said earlier. He wasn't interested, and wisely, in trying to recreate that stuff. I think that was one of the design features of Shadow Kingdom, was that you're not going to beat Queen Jane approximately, the original recording. You can't. So you go around it. And as a guitar player, my job, which fortunately I knew early enough on, was to just hint at those signature lines that identified what the original had in them. Don't play them literally. Don't recreate that thing. Don't attempt to recreate that thing, because that was not the operation at hand.
Given that you all played on the album, what was it like when you listened back to it? What did you think of the final product when you listened to the album from beginning to end?
I love it. I think it's a wonderful record. It's inviting.
And from being there, I just heard the one song, but his vocals really on.
Yeah.
Previous records is like, well, okay, but he was really, you could tell that this meant something to him at the time. That the vocals were great, and they were one take,
largely. Yeah.
Largely. Well, they did they edit things together?
They did. There were multiple takes that they edited, like we did for "My Head Is My Only House."
And most of the takes while I was there, each couple takes, the arrangement would change.
Yeah.
He'd get us to try different ways to play the song. So by the end of the day, we played it maybe 5 or 6 different ways. Mm-hmm. So one take wasn't going to cut to another take. So it was these live vocals, and that's how he chose the take too, by how good the vocal was.
Right.
Well, Ira, it's occurring to me, it's been so long since, it's been a couple of years since we did that interview. Did I tell you about the anonymous phone call that I got?
No.
No?
Let's hear it.
So Steve, there were Bob Dylan fans, God bless them, that were really, really trying to find stuff out, as they're prone to do, as I'm prone to doing. And there was this guy who called me from a blocked number, and it was really strange. Obviously it was strange, but he said he wanted to know the circumstances that our interview was conducted. And he said, "We have a right to know." And I started to chuckle. I thought it was funny.
Maybe
and he said,
Bob.
What's that?
Maybe it was Bob.
No, it was not. But it got real serious. The guy said, "You tell me what you know, young man, right now." And I said, "You know as much as I know." I don't know it.
What was it he was going for, do you know?
He wanted he wanted a bunch of stuff I didn't have, specific like dates. And I said, "Listen, everything that I know was in our interview. So I don't have I have no unique information."
Sounds like we're about to be taken to an undisclosed location.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, look, you know this better than anybody, Paul. That world, the Bob world of fandom and interest and just this obsession with this, and he is endlessly fascinating. He's held people's interest for decades, and the movie that just came out was another massive rekindling of that stuff. And I think that 100 years from now, people will still be playing Bob's music because it'll last.
Right.
When we worked with him, the beauty, I think, for me, because I had, after the 80s albums and then Shadow Kingdom, a lot of time with the guy, and then one-on-one time with him. The best part to me, working with Bob is the music. He's in the moment, and it's the most important thing in the world to him. And we're going to work until we get it right. He's relentless in that. And to bring in other people that we've mentioned earlier, they all share this in common. And it's only done when it's correct. We're not finished until we really gave it our all. Brian and Beefheart, all these people, they all share that same thing. I'd like to think that we have that also, because it wasn't lost on me, and I think for Steve also, that you work something until you feel you can live with it, and you can feel that it's doing for you the thing that you want it to do. repeatedly. And Bob's that way by 1,000,000,000%. It's right when it's right. One of the songs that we did a number of times, I think I mentioned that to you, was Watchtower. 4 different versions of it. And in the end, it didn't even appear on the record.
Except
as something else, which I'm not going to say because I can get in trouble. That guy will call me up. But the fact is that he tried and tried and tried, and at the end, for whatever reason, it didn't cut the mustard, and that was the end of it. So I think that the relentlessness, and Bob's a good example of that. You chase this thing down. With that great Miles Davis tune, Miles chases the voodoo down. That's it. That's really what this stuff is all about. It's not about, that's good enough, let's move on. That's film and TV. That's commercials.
that is the exception with the people I've been very lucky enough to work
For your
with.
movies, and yeah.
The movies I've worked with, the composers I've worked with, Danny never does that. John
Yeah.
Bryan never does
Right.
that.
No, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm just saying that.
But because you have worked with people who said that's
yeah,
good enough.
they're the exceptions.
Well, Ira, can you tell us, what do you like most about collaborating with Steve Bartek? What makes Steve a great creative partner?
His openness, willingness to raise an eyebrow and then not let it go further than that. When I play something, hey, listen to this. The fact that we have these overlapping skill sets. If I had to find an orchestrator in LA, I'd pick this guy. If he'd have to find someone maybe to mix a record, maybe he'd pick me. But we meet at this place. We really are a great Venn diagram for each other, in that we have a number of skills that overlap, and then there's our specialties where, we get to do what we do on our own really well with the encouragement of the other, so that when he's playing a guitar part and I'm producing, let's say a guitar part, I'm producing him. I'm going to pull things out of him he hadn't thought of. And the same thing happens when I play something. He'll pull things out of me. And I think that's the thing I enjoy the most of the collaboration, is that we complement each other in a very, it's not that we're not critical, I'll say, no, I don't like that, but it's the fact that we are complementary. That there's this sense of, obviously, given mutual respect, but also that, I'm his biggest fan and he's my biggest fan in these moments. That's going to make this whole thing that we're doing greater than the sum of the parts.
We push each other.
Yeah.
It's like he pushes me to get things done, and I push him to change things so that it moves, it keeps moving in the production side. So,
Well, I'm going to flip the coin. So to turn the coin over, Steve, what is it about Ira Ingber that you like as a collaborator? What makes him a great creative partner?
well, one, he's a great lyricist and melody creator, which are lyrics are things I've never had. I wrote songs for the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and one of the songs was named Rainy Day Mushroom Pillow, and another was Paxton's Backstreet Carnival. So as far as lyrics go, he is a joy to have as a collaborator, because it takes any pressure off of me. The other is, a lot of the things that Ira had been saying is totally it. We're very complementary, but we're different. For instance, like I was told, my guitar playing, you could tell I was a flute player, is like Ira's guitar playing is a guitar playing, because he plays a guitar much more guitaristically than I do. So the two of them together pull each other in different directions. And it's really a joy. That's all I can say.
So, in closing here, for anybody who's
anybody,
well, for anybody who is discovering Bearing All, or they're checking out this interview, and thank you, first of all, for everybody who's tuning in. What would you say to those people who are discovering your music?
I have had this, I'm almost tempted to say it's a mantra, but I have this guiding principle of creative people that, you go to a movie and the filmmaker is asking you for hour and a half, 2 hours of your life, non-refundable time. And a song creator, a producer, I want 4 minutes, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, non-refundable. You're never going to get this time back. My responsibility, I feel, is to make it worth their while. The part of the exchange is, if you give me your time, I'm going to give you something that's going to make it worthwhile to you. More than worthwhile, I'm going to make it rewarding. I'm going to show you that by you giving me your most precious asset, I'm going to give you something in exchange that I think is commensurate. And the thing that I think makes that, certainly getting older helps to understand that concept as a given. Time becomes much more valuable than really anything. And I think in the case of what Bearing All is, we want to make this thing be something that not only is we're going to get 4 minutes of someone's time, they're going to want to do another 4 minutes, and maybe another 4 after that, because there are layers to this stuff. It's not a one listen operation. And so that's what I would invite anybody listening to our music. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your additional time if you're going to do it again. And I would like to issue a money back guarantee. I'll make it worth your time. Now, you may not like it. That's the thing. Our point may not get across. And in which case, it's not because we didn't work as hard as we could, making it as unapologetic as possible. We have all the talent, presumably. We have the studio. We have all the resources we need to make it as good as we possibly can. And that's the guiding principle.
One of the reasons why the record even exists, we had done this for ourselves. We had like 6 tunes. It was all for ourselves. And it was like, well, it'd be really nice if other people heard it. So the fact that someone is listening to it is really rewarding for us, period.
Right.
The whole idea is to have people hear it.
Well, everybody out there, it's bearing-all.com. There's also an Instagram page. And check it out, folks. I hope you all enjoy. I hope you listen from beginning to end. Give it your full attention and really focus on the music. I think it'll take you to some interesting places.
Don't put it on at a dinner party. It'll slow your appetite. Yeah, it'll clear the room. But thank you, Paul. This has been fun.
Thank you, guys.
Reconnect, and Steve.
Nice to meet you. It was great.
Nice to meet you, Steve. And Ira, good to talk to you again. So this interview was recorded April 4th, 2025. If anybody out there is listening, I have no extra information about it. I don't know anything. I'm just a clown on the bus.
Yes, but this fellow who called you doesn't necessarily believe that. So how do we know you really are telling the truth?
There you go.
You never know.
Yeah,
you never know.
But I will say this, that everything that we've said is subject to a rival plausible hypothesis. So, everything that I've said could be certainly reinterpreted. No, this is it, the truth as we know it. So help us, deity.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen,
Yeah.
Thank
you
you.
all have a great one.
Sorry, Paul.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.